The talents that I took for this encounter were Way of the Cobra, Dire Frenzy, Post Haste, Blink Strikes, Intimidation, A Murder of Crows, and Killer Cobra. The only two that I would honestly recommend absolutely 100% having would be Intimidation and Post Haste. Post Haste I think should always be a thing for hunters, at least the way I use it, but I'm very, very used to using the speed boost and it's very reliable. Intimidation is a must. You need that extra interrupt for this encounter. I completed this encounter with an eye level of 908, an upgraded Shadowhunter's Voodoo Mask, the Apex Predator's Claw, and trinkets were a stat stick with mastery and a terrible bloodthirsty instinct. This was because I was struggling in the latter phases with a little bit of healing, so the Shadowhunter's Voodoo Mask was a definite must for me. I also only have 1 or 2 legendary choices with my hunter. It's also worth mentioning that I had my Nighthold 4-piece equipped, so that helped a little bit too. This encounter faces you off against Tugar Blood Totem and his pet worm Jormog. Honestly, this encounter wasn't too difficult even at a lower eye level. I went and found a weak aura for his interrupt because that's probably the most key part to this first phase. And you want to rotate your counter shot, your pet's intimidation, and if you can land it, your freezing trap. If not, I was letting my pet soak a couple of them there because they couldn't kill him and it was just easy to heal up from. All I was doing to deal with that was keep rolling men pet on him, and then also using my misdirection for the damage reduction from my artifact weapon. There are a couple mechanics to this encounter. I chose not to pop heroism or drums here on this particular first phase, but it involves you facing against Tugar, who focuses primarily on your pet. However, it's worth mentioning if your pet dies, it's pretty much impossible to re-establish aggro on your pet and you have to kite the rest of the way. Good news is he can be kited with counter shot and your slowing traps and everything like that, but it's just easier to let your pet do the hard work. There'll be a number of things to avoid on the ground, which is all pretty self-explanatory. Don't stand in the bad. There'll be Fell Surge totems that spawn. Now, I also made a targeting macro for these with my Cobra Shot because they have very little health, but if they get off their stun, it's pretty much endgame for you because everything else will hit. Tugar himself casts Earthquake here, putting these little rocks on the ground. You want to position yourself with these between you and the worm whenever he's doing charge, because he's got a buff called Fell Hardened Scales that reduces his damage by 10% per each stack. You want to ideally bring those down to at least 2 stacks by the end of the encounter. If not, it's okay, depending on how high your DPS is in that second phase, but that's also why I chose to save heroism for the second phase there. Otherwise, there will be small adds that spawn. You can have your pet focus them and then kite Tugar over to them and then cleave everyone down, but they do such a negligible amount of damage. A lot of people spoke about using a pet with a traditional quote-unquote tank pet. I decided to stick with my Spirit Beast because he's great, and the heal that you get from Spirit Beast I found to be essential for this. Hunters don't get a ton of self-healing, and I was trying to avoid using Exhilaration and my potion and everything until the second phase, just in case my DPS wasn't high enough. As I mentioned, I was quite a low eye level for this, even with a fully upgraded artifact weapon, so I wanted all the help I could get in that second phase. There's no enrage on this encounter, so you can kind of take your time. Potentially, and I'm not sure because I didn't try it, you can just kind of extend the encounter to the point where Jormog has to lose all of his stacks. I got him down to 2 by the end, and I found it kind of easiest to try and phase them both over or kill Tugar before or while Jormog was underground. It would give me a bit of time to kind of recollect myself and sort out my healing and everything like that. When one of these enemies dies, the other becomes enraged and deals 150% more damage. That's why it's so imperative in the second phase that you're interrupting Sonic Scream as much as possible. The only way you can do this as a hunter, however, is with Intimidate and your trap. So that was kind of the learning curve for me in phase 2. When Jormog popped back up, and became attackable again, I was trying to make sure I was at as high of health as possible. Your pet won't take too much damage during this phase, so honestly all of your healing's going to be on you. I had a macro, and I've always had a macro for Spirit Mend. I have it turned off of auto cast, and then I just have a cast on me macro. But again, you're going to want to use Intimidation and your Freezing Trap as much as possible, and then Turtle and Feign Death if you have the Helm to kind of mitigate some of that damage and make sure at least you're healed up enough to take the full hit. Because in addition, his like spit damage there does just as much damage, or not as much, but quite a significant chunk of damage to you during this encounter. Otherwise, phase 2 is a pure DPS race. You just want to dump all of your damage, all of your cooldowns into Jormog until he dies. He's gonna focus your pet. I never had my pet die in this phase, so I really wasn't too concerned. I'm not sure if he drops aggro permanently like Tugar does, but it's just a bit of a DPS race at this point. Providing you can do all that, this encounter is very, very simple. Hopefully this video has helped. If you've got any comments or questions, again, let me know in the comments. Thanks once again for watching.